and management programs. So thank you very much for the collaboration, Dr. Ranjan Banerjee.
Thank you.
The notion of leadership is changing. The new breed of leaders are the ones who can break the mold and show the way. Not necessarily the classical definition that places emphasis on hierarchy. You will all agree with me that these last few months, India and the rest of the world are in the throes of a crisis, the likes of which we've never seen before. While this situation has become an existential threat for many organizations, it has equally brought out the best in people that has helped their organizations emerge much stronger and ready for the post-COVID world. It is important for us to understand what were the traits that such leaders demonstrated, since these are the ones that makes a difference. Was it lateral thinking, decisive action, inclusive approach, identifying opportunities in a crisis, execution skills, or some combination of all of the above? A crisis of this magnitude calls for a leader who can look beyond themselves, who can be compelled to act not only for their own people, but for the society as a whole. Clearly, one can leave development of such traits to instincts, experience, or sheer chance, or one can take a more structured approach to determine which of these traits are learnable and create a framework to ensure more people are exposed to the same. That is where reputed academic organizations such as SPJIMR come into play to help the next generation develop the right perspective and foundation to become leaders of the future. Post that, organizations such as FLO come into picture by offering a platform for entrepreneurs, mentoring them and helping them evolve. FLO, along with our parent organization FICCI, can then work with stakeholders to help enhance policies and governance where appropriate. FLO currently has a membership of over 8,000 women with professional and business background. We have 17 chapters, and our focus is on promoting leadership amongst women. I believe this is a powerful collaboration that will help build a new crop of leaders for the future. A quick introduction of our panel members. Dr. Sangita Reddy, you stole my heart when you made a statement. We were determined to change the perception from poor Dr. Reddy, he has 4 daughters, to lucky Dr. Reddy, he has 4 daughters. He is probably one of the proudest fathers today. I said one of, as many dads, including mine, may have logged in today. Dr. Reddy is a member of the World Economic Forum. In December 2019, she became the president of FICCI. This is over and above her full-time job as the joint managing director at Apollo Hospitals Group. In a nutshell, Dr. Reddy is a global healthcare influencer, healthcare technocrat, social entrepreneur, and a humanitarian. Welcome, Dr. Reddy.
Thank you, and namaste.
Namaste. Dr. Ranjan Banerjee has over 30 years of experience as a teacher, consultant, and an academic leader. He's an alumnus of IIT Bombay, IIM Calcutta, and holds a PhD in management from the University of Minnesota. Under his leadership, the institute has emerged among the top 5 institutes in the country in the QS Global Ranking. And congratulations, Dr. Banerjee, on the extension of your term for another 5 years. Pleasure having you with us.
Thank you so much. Hi to everybody.
Our moderator, Professor Ratika Gore, is a good friend who has over 20 years of experience in education and running various businesses. She's a co-faculty at SPJIMR and teaches business communication, design thinking, and critical thinking. She's currently a doctoral scholar from IIM Lucknow. So welcome to all the panelists, moderator, FLO members from Mumbai and the various chapters. And I also see we have a number of past chairs and past presidents who have joined us today. Glad to have all of you with us, and also those from SPJIMR and others who have been able to join us today. I'm now going to hand it over to Ratika to take it forward.
Thanks, Maloo. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's a pleasure to have this opportunity to chat with 2 leaders, both of whom are from industry that has seen huge challenges in the last few months, from uncertainty to collective fear to inspiring innovation under crisis, and to reimagine the world of new possibilities. So while they are from healthcare and education industry, the panel will echo and answer questions for leaders in the audience from all domains, and help us deepen our understanding of this space, which is leadership in the times of crisis? It's a question often asked, are leaders born or made? I believe leaders are forged in crisis. The ability to help others triumph over adversity may not perhaps be co-written in the genetic code, but I think leaders become real when they help inspire people through difficult times. So, and there's a lot to learn today. So let's quickly go on to the chat. So the first question I will pose to both the panel members, Sangita and Ranjan, but ladies first. So Dr. Reddy, if you could start with this. The question is this. So we know we are in a crisis right now, but just to broaden our understanding of what a crisis can be, could you tell us what is the nature of crisis for a leader?
So let me first say thank you. I think this is just a great forum, and Maloo, what a wonderful initiative. Also, I want to commend the thought process behind putting this series together and the focus on leadership, because ultimately to transition, to adapt, to inspire, to have resilience and to manage in an environment, you need a core or a base of leadership to enable all this to happen. And therefore, picking on leadership as one of the critical aspects in a crisis is truly quite commendable. So congratulations to all of you. So just jumping in, I think there is no doubt in everyone's mind that this is going to be something that we sit back and tell our grandchildren that, you know what, we survived that. We lived through it. We had read about these in science fiction books. We had never imagined that we would live through it, that our cities would be deserted, that we could not go to a restaurant, that everything which was normal converted to this new normal, which was masks and social distancing and inability to go to work and an overcrowding of beds and a fear for life that we've never seen before. And ultimately, I think a combination of being able to adapt, being resilient, finding a way to figure out with whatever limited knowledge and data and facts we have, figure out an action or a game plan which is inclusive and can carry the team and the troops ahead. And then inspiring people to follow that plan because you are willing to put yourself as much at risk as everybody else. And this is something, when besides FICCI, I'm also privileged to head or be part of the Apollo family and the Apollo Hospitals team. And everybody asked me, why did you go into the COVID ward? And I basically said, if I was not ready to do that, to show our team that we have adequate protective equipment, we believe it's important to do this because we have to go out and save lives. And many HR people told me later that the nurses said, Sangita ma'am came, so we know it's safe. And so we need to be able to put ourselves up front out there as leaders. And I think that's one of the most important things about leadership, that we should never ask our teams to do something that we are not ready to do ourselves.
So thank you, Dr. Reddy. The fact that you said with limited knowledge, you have to create a game plan is a very inspiring thought, very powerful thought. Dr. Banerjee, you have a thought on how would you define crisis? What is the nature of crisis for a leader?
So, there is a word called change and a word called crisis. So we say change is something that is different from the expected or routine. So if you have a son or daughter and they get up at 9 o'clock in the morning every day and they get up at 7 o'clock in the morning one day, that is a change. Now, when there is a very large change, either internal or external, that threatens the fundamental assumption of the way your business operates, that constitutes a crisis. As in this case, the crisis can be unexpected and sudden, or a crisis can be something that can happen due to gradual neglect. As an example, in 2006, when I left India for the US, there was a company called Nokia with 80% market share. When I came back in 2010, there was a company called Nokia, but its market share was not something worth mentioning at that point in time. The point is that was a crisis that happened to Nokia gradually. The change happened gradually. They didn't see it coming. The crisis we are seeing today is an unexpected shock. The second dimension I will make on this is that if you look at crisis, what does crisis force you to do? It forces you to question the fundamental assumptions about the way you do business, about the way you operate. With not only business, today it is causing us to question the fundamental assumptions about family life, about what it means to stay in touch with people, about connecting with people. Now, if you look at radical innovation and say, what are the characteristics of market-changing innovation? You'll say market-changing innovation forces you to question the fundamental assumptions of your business. Therefore, it is likely that in the seeds of crisis, many firms will find market-changing innovation. You know, one hates to quote Chinese at this point in time, but I'm going to take that risk and say the Chinese word for crisis has two meanings. One is danger, and the second is hidden opportunity. And both of these are true. So that's kind of a quick response.
So interesting. You said that, you know, new assumptions and new ways of looking at business, and that is also a crisis of sorts. So we are in one. We are in the middle of a crisis. Nobody knows what's happening. There's no model which can predict the way virus is working. So what has emerged as priority, or what are the key things you'd like to focus on as a leader? Dr. Reddy, if you could throw some light on that.
So I think the first and most important aspect of leadership, especially in this kind of a crisis, this is a health crisis, a medical crisis, which is ultimately resulting in an economic crisis. It's a distance scenario where people are artificially forced to be separated. And in a way, it was a period of a medically induced coma. So in these type of, uncertain times, I think the first one is really this ability to say that for the people who are depending on me, I will craft the most viable possible plan with the information and data I have. I will build in them a resilience to say that, we can continue to adapt as new knowledge comes into the fore. So we started treatment, of patients saying HCQ and azithromycin. We quickly found that remdesivir was the next day, drug of choice, but access was difficult. And now acrylamide and other medications are coming. So this ability to keep learning, adapting, I think is one of the most important aspects. Clearly crafting a plan, and then finally that ability to inspire people to move beyond protectionism, move beyond fear, and step out to say, I will find a way to survive and to support other people to survive. So that the aspect of inspiration, I believe, is very important for leadership and change. And finally, at the end of the day, I think it's very important to see many things in perspective. Things which are seeming extremely big, I can't go to a restaurant, is actually not such a big deal. If you look at it in that right perspective, that I'm surviving, some people are worse. And so one of the most, significant things I read during this period was that we're all in the same storm, but we're in different boats. And if we think for a minute of, the small boats which are significantly disrupted with no food, no home, then we know that our storm is not so bad and we can definitely handle it. I think the other one, looking at, the professor was inspiring in his Chinese quotation, but really there's another one which says that when the winds of change are blowing, some people build walls to protect themselves, and some others build windmills. So since, many of us are in business, we need to look at new opportunities, new methodologies, whether it's work from home, the new digital, new things opening up, and move with that change so that we stay resilient, we stay adapting. And then, like Darwin said, it was not the largest who survived, but the most adaptable.
Fantastic. It's a very powerful thought again. Like you said, you have to adapt with new knowledge and inspire people. Dr. Banerjee, like to add a few thoughts on this. What are the new priorities?
Sorry, can I quickly ask Dr. Banerjee something? This free flowing. Do you believe the problems we are having in the northern part of the country, on the borders, are resultant of a sudden crisis which came, or resultant of something that we have been neglecting? Which crisis definition does this come under?
You know, because this is political, it's a very tricky question in a forum.
Okay,
but yeah, I wouldn't say it's sudden. I would say it's been building up for some time. I wouldn't say these things just happen as a shock. I think there are signals. I mean, I was listening to Ajay Bakshi on NDTV, and he pointed out multiple signals. So I think there is definitely an element of something that has been building up. And maybe there is a flashpoint because we are in an environment which is turbulent, and that flashpoint came earlier. But I would not put it as purely sudden.
You know, your example was so good that I couldn't resist correlating it to the north. Please, sorry to disrupt. Please go ahead.
No. Yeah.
That was an interesting point, yeah.
So, you know, Ratika, I think there are many themes that Dr. Reddy has touched on, including inclusivity, including resilience, including adaptability. But one of the nice examples that I read, which I think really sums this up, is there's something called the Stockdale paradox. There's this guy called Jim Stockdale, who was the vice president of the United States, and he was in a concentration camp in Vietnam for many, many years. And this paradox talks about who survived the concentration camp in Vietnam, where there was torture, there was lack of hope, there was a long-term crisis. And he said there are three types of people. There are what I call the blind optimists. So the blind optimist is the guy who says in 3 months, this is going to go away. So I'm cheerful and I'm fine and I'll get through it. But in 3 months, this is going to go away. Then there is the pessimist who says this is life and it's going to go on like this forever, and I will find something new to complain about every day. Then there is what I would call the pragmatic optimist who says this is a crisis. I don't know when exactly it's going to get over. So I will prepare on how to survive this crisis positively, but I have a vision for a future beyond the crisis. And I prepare for that vision, knowing fully well that when that vision is going to come about, I do not know. I have to prepare for alternative scenarios within that vision. So so who dies first? That's the question. Now, this is a morbid topic to be talking about at this point in time, but the blind optimists die first. Because on 3 months and 1 day, they have no clue how to cope. The pessimist goes second. It is the pragmatic optimist, the person who says, this is a crisis, I recognize I'm in a crisis, let me get the reality. So that is one perspective, and I think that really sums up something that I think has worked. The second dimension, I think, is that as leaders, you must realize you do not have all the answers. So two things I think a leader can do. You can only lead when you are sorted personally. So just remember, you are also going through insecurity. You are also going through a pressure. Get your own head in the right place. And for that, if you have to take time off, talk to somebody, figure it out, what are the mechanisms that you will use to stay calm, because your job is to keep a lot of other people calm. So I think that is one. The second is figure out that the people who give you information in good times may be different from the people you will need to give you. For instance, your technology people become far more important. The people who are on the ground monitoring various localities become far more important. So that is the second. The third is you must be willing to reach out personally. And Dr. Reddy mentioned this. So for instance, one of the most valuable things I have done, Ratika, for me personally, is I have reached out and had Google Hangouts with students in groups of 6. I would have done at least 20 of these Hangouts. And they really give me a pulse of what stakeholders are thinking about, because a lot of this is about the management of emotions of your team and your stakeholders. At the end of the day, inspiration is one thing, but I also believe leadership is about service. You do very little of what actually happens in an organization. Your role is to enable people who want to do things to do what they can. And I think that element of service becomes very, very important.
So there are two very interesting thoughts which have emerged in this particular question. One is, how do we inspire and work in the current situation? And other is how to plan for future with limited knowledge. But before that, I was very keen to understand. So I picked up Ranjan, Dr. Banerjee's thought that you need to also work on yourself. So Dr. Reddy, how do you keep your own sense of balance? Any thoughts on that?
Honestly, I'm not very structured thinker or a very organized leader. My primary philosophy is just do it. So you go out there and you're in this place, you've been blessed by the opportunity to serve. And when you're thinking of serving and taking care of others and the goal that you have in front of you, you continue to innovate on the fly and you just give it the best you have every minute of what you're doing. So I'm not a great intellectual or a great thinker. I'm just out there trying to do the best I can to help as many as I can. And the one fantastic thing which has happened in this lockdown is that I didn't have to go on so many flights. And before, we were on 3 to 5 flights a week, which was crazy. And then I suddenly realized, hey, what a great time this is. So from 6 to 7 in the morning, I'm walking in the compound. And I've taken pictures of flowers. I've figured out that we have wonderful birds. So we need to find our own personal space to renew so that when we keep renewing ourselves, we can come out and give our best to others. So if it is, that maybe that's a way of being selfish, I should have been doing something else for someone else at that point of time, so be it. But I think self-renewal, self-resilience is a very important aspect. And equipping yourself with knowledge, information, reading enough, and being as confident as you can about the data and facts is another way that I do it. So I do spend a lot of time reading and talking to people. I thought the Google Hangout was a great way. I definitely talk to as many people on the ground as possible, whether they're patients, security guards who see a lot and know they can talk. So I think that real live interaction and first-hand information is far more powerful than any reports or any kind of printed or digital data that you can get, because ultimately it is all about the human being. It is about people having experiences, whether they're the Apollo family as we call them, or whether it's about the FICCI team or the customers across the board. It's all about experiences, it's about perceptions, it's about belief systems, as much as it is about data and processes and hard numbers and facts. And the ability to merge those two and kind of, very long ago, again, a very simplistic thing, but I heard somebody say that they didn't know what happened to an individual in that 20-minute, half-an-hour drive from their home to their workplace. At home, you're participative, you're warm, you're friendly, you're visiting your children, and then you go into the workplace and you become a boss. So what is this? Why do you leave your humanity at the door when you enter your office? Because actually, the more you use and the more you tune into your humanity, the greater you can be as a leader. So I think just do it. Just do what feels good and natural, and you don't need to pose or be this boss persona that you read about or heard about. And then you begin to enjoy it, and then leadership becomes natural. And when that is, then the authenticity of leadership shows out, and you know what? People recognize authenticity.
Thank you so much. That question on YouTube post, which is what happened in the commute between home and office, I think is a research question many of our faculty colleagues might also be interested in. But I think which is coming very clear is that the sense of service seems to be like an inner compass to really go forward and work in these times. So I'll come back to the first thread which I picked up. How do we inspire people right now? So there is something called a crisis communication. I mean, you yourself said both of you have done Google Hangouts, and there's a lot of emails I know Dr. Banerjee has been sending, and you mentioned. So is there any to-dos, any tips, any thought on how do you communicate during crisis? Anything changes?
Can I, maybe I'll try to build on this. I resonate with everything that was just said by Dr. Reddy. I think she said, I just do it, but at the same time, she has a theory for self-renewal and self-resilience. So she kind of covered both bases. I think there are 2 or 3 principles. I think one principle, crisis or no crisis, start with why. Whenever you're communicating, explain the underlying reason behind what you are doing. Second is that there are things you know and there are things you don't know. Be upfront about what you don't know. Do not hesitate to give bad news. And the fourth one, okay, so I'll have 4 and 5. Empathy. That element of empathy, that element of emotion. And in written communication, I have found that I haven't handled this situation before. So most of my big emails, I sound it off with at least 4 to 5 people. And I remember one of the first emails I sent a news out and I bounced it off 4 faculty, I think from quite a few. And at least 2 people came back to me and said that, look, your style is normally more emotional. Where is the emotion? And I remember kind of then writing that when the students left the campus, it was as though somebody had taken a giant vacuum cleaner and sucked the energy out of the campus. And I got at least 20 people writing into me on that single quote. But my point is that knowing that you yourself have not handled this situation before, taking feedback even in the way you communicate so that you are continuously improving in the process. And this element of empathy, I think, Dr. Reddy also touched on it. How will you have this empathy? It's only if you do individual outreach beyond group outreach, because it is individual outreach that is going to give you, stories of what families are going through. So if there is a student who's in the home doing online classes, but is also the son in the family with an elderly person, then that student who's taking classes is also the person who answers the bell and goes down to get the groceries. And are you keeping that in mind when you're communicating to that student? So I think that's kind of the sense of what I'd say.
Dr. Reddy, any thoughts on how communication changes during crisis?
No, I think, Professor said it fantastically. There's no, the only thing which I think is great about communication in a crisis is that you break down a lot of the formality of communication. And some of those lessons are worthwhile to be saved and stored and reused in a non-crisis. But besides that, I'd go completely with what he said.
Very interesting, almost counterintuitive that there should be actually less formality when communicating in crisis. And I guess that's right when you said empathy matters most. So there's this question which I know Dr. Banerjee would probably be very happy to answer because he is a very strong voice on innovation. And I know Dr. Reddy also has been working on innovation. Under crisis, there's also an opportunity to innovate, and you must. So a lot of things are going in this direction. So any thoughts on that? How do you nurture a crisis innovation under such atmosphere when there's so much uncertainty? What fuels it? How do you inspire? Dr. Reddy, we want to go first, or Dr. Banerjee?
Let's let Dr. Banerjee.
Okay.
So, this was the Lucknowi andaz, and who said that first, kind of. Okay, so I think every crisis itself can be a trigger to innovation. So, for instance, in the institute, if I had gone into the institute and said, we are going to start teaching online in the next 7 days, I would have found at least 20 reasons why it could not be done. But we were in a situation and we went online and I think started teaching online in 2 to 3 days. And then quickly, as you start to do something like that, you will get feedback on things that are working and not working. So I think, I'm a great believer in design thinking. So I think these are great opportunities for rapid prototypes, quick inciting, and refining and innovating as you go. The second is that there is a lot of innovation happening in multiple parts of the organization. So the ability to create mechanisms for quick information sharing, dissemination, and scale up is also important. The third dimension I will again say is that you need to listen to the people with the ear to the ground at multiple levels, and the way you constitute teams and give a voice to people also is something that can deliver. So a large part of the leader's role is also enabling innovation, giving a direction, creating the right teams, and then largely getting out of the way beyond providing that encouraging framework. But of course, I would recognize that still, while we think education is challenged, Dr. Reddy's job is 20 times more challenging than what we are going through. The risk to individuals is much larger. The need for demonstration is much larger. So, but I think the seeds of innovation, if you can start thinking about what assumptions you've challenged and how you can use that to scale new models, create new assumptions, that's one. The second is try and think of what changes are going to happen, and each change creates an opportunity. For instance, a very simple thing. The proportion of people working from home is going to go up in the next 2 years. Now, the moment you say that that is true, one of the big things that it is going to open up for us is the proportion of working women will go up. Simply because the tyranny of the 9 to 5, and this FICCI Flow is a good forum for me to talk about this.
Yes.
The tyranny of the 9 to 5 workplace will be less, because I firmly believe that the 9 to 5 workplace must have been designed by a man. So, so now the moment you accept that, then for an educational institution, it says there are a large number of women with potential and talent who want to be coming back into the workplace. What are the educational products for them? So I think it starts also by looking at the larger trends in society and what you expect to sustain, and then you use that to trigger changes in assumptions.
I think that's, yes.
I completely echo that. And I think, challenging the assumption. So most of us felt you can only see a doctor if you're right there in front of him. And now the telemedicine has just taken off. We're doing more than 2,000 to 3,000 teleconsults a day. But the interesting thing is that an organization is capable of responding to this change or using the innovation if they have been preparing for it. And actually, our telemedicine platform was something we innovated 20 years ago. We connected rural India with our urban large hospitals. The platform was there, but the doctors never felt the need because patients were ready to come to them. So we've been doing like 10,000 consults a day for rural India on a pro bono type basis for the government. But that platform was quickly innovated upon to use for patients. Our AI capability brought out our COVID risk score because we used AI and all the knowledge in that. So here I think there are a few lessons. One is the openness to innovation. Two is the fact that some existing solutions can suddenly become a lot more valuable. Three is that while some people will adopt a change, there's a relatively different pace of adopting. So innovation is, will the early adopters, of course, but there's an additional 2 or 3 waves to make your innovation stick and truly meaningful. Otherwise, you can be very happy with the process and the fact that 100 doctors are doing it. But if you actually have 7,000 doctors as part of your ecosystem, you win only when all 7,000 of them have adopted. So we need to innovate. We need to use platforms we have and build a culture of innovation. And then we need to measure the impact of innovation by extended usage and complete usage of it. And then finally, it's just the mindset of innovation. If we can continue to keep and nurture that seed, then many more things will arrive because you've started in a crisis and it took off in the crisis, but can you sustain it during the non-crisis?
Yeah, Danny, that's a very interesting point. You're saying that while the crisis may have triggered more adoption of the platform which you mentioned, Dr. Reddy, the idea is to see if it sticks after the crisis is over. And of course, the mindset and challenging assumptions is basic tenets of design thinking and innovation. So I'm going to take a quick break here. I'm going to invite my dear friend, Maloo Natarajan, to come in. I don't know if people know, she's been a banker. We know each other for 4 days, 25 years of banking in Singapore and in India. And now currently the chairperson for FLO Mumbai chapter. Maloo, all yours. I know you have a surprise thing for the panel members.
Yes, I don't think I'm going to keep my word with you, Sangita. We may extend it by another 5 minutes. It was a request to add a fun factor to the session. And so we decided to have a rapid fire segment. As I was telling Dr. Banerjee, there is no hamper at the end of it. It's going to be very quick. So all we need is a one-word answer from each of you. So let's start. The first one is a book that you would recommend to every entrepreneur.
Any order? Who goes first?
Dr. Reddy.
Okay. So I'd recommend my all-time favorite, which is Ayn Rand, Fountainhead, because I think you need to be grounded and okay, but you wanted one word. So Ayn Rand, Fountainhead.
Dr. Banerjee.
You know, I had the answer ready for leader, and I was just wondering if it is that different. But I wouldn't go beyond on becoming a leader by Warren Bennis. I think very fundamental and kind of.
Yeah. A role model?
Mother Teresa.
For me, contextual. My dad in certain things, Rahul Dravid in others, and Barack Obama in others.
Hey, not fair. Even I want to say my dad.
Okay. Okay. In many things, Obama.
Obama. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sibling rivalry. Sangita would love that.
Can be empowering.
Yeah.
You want one word? You want
you
a
go
line?
out of it.
For this one, yes, you can have a line because you have.
So exactly that you know, if you spin it on its head and figure out how competition can help you be the best version of yourself, then sibling rivalry can be extremely empowering, extremely liberating, and extremely inspirational.
Okay. Dr. Banerjee.
Parents can prevent it by refusing to compare.
Current education system.
That's for me. We need to make teachers the most important people in the country. They are not currently.
They're not. Okay.
We need to let people understand that it's not a system that ends in the classroom. It's not a system that ends with a degree or at any age. In today's world, the only thing we can say about a learning system is that it's a continuous learning system.
I don't think Karan Johar is going to invite either of you because it's not a one-word answer from either of you. So, window or an aisle seat?
Window.
Dr. Banerjee?
Yeah, I just want, sorry, this was still on the teacher one, right? Or
No.
I missed the audio for him. I missed the audio.
Window or an aisle seat?
Oh, window every time.
Okay. Secret talent no one knows.
I can sing.
You can sing. Do you have time today? Dr. Banerjee?
Recent cook.
Yeah, good. Okay. If you could switch jobs with someone, who would it be?
Right now, in 12 months, I would love to switch jobs with someone who does like a tour guide. I want to see places in the world. I'm feeling so constrained, like my wings have been cut. But I also would, and if I can please, I'd love to switch places with the Prime Minister.
Okay.
I feel that there's so much that can be done and I'd love a shot at doing it. But I'm never getting into politics. But questions like these allow you to dream.
Hope you do that one day, Sangita.
No.
Dr. Banerjee?
A PhD student. That was the best phase in my life.
Okay. What compliment do people give you the most?
That I'm a good mom. No, well, this is a compliment that I like, that I appreciate, because I'm always guilty about, have I given enough time to motherhood?
Okay. Dr. Banerjee?
My screen is freezing, I think. Yeah, it's unfortunate, it's scary, but I get the word inspiring. And I guess I don't think I am, but I get the word quite a few times.
Thank you. I'm going to stop there because that was fabulous. Thank you so much. But there are a lot of questions from the audience. So, Sangita, another 5 minutes if you can, if you don't mind.
Sure, Maloo. Got it.
First question is, we have a past president, Vinita Bimbet. She had a question to ask. Can you unmute Vinita, please?
Yes, I did. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Maloo. It's really been a wonderful session, and I loved your rapid fire round. Thank you, Sangita. So nice to have you here on a joint Flow and FICCI platform. And thank you, Dr. Banerjee, as well. And I must thank Ratika too. It's been so inspirational, everything you have said. And I read this somewhere, and outbreak doesn't change how you do things. It changes what you do. And I can see that, at least Sangita, when you spoke about Apollo hospitals, you have changed so many things. But what I'd like to know from you, both in fact, but particularly Sangita, is that, the impact of this is being felt all over, and you're navigating, a broad range of interrelated issues from a business perspective and a perspective of a leader, from employees to customers to cash. What is your insight for business resilience for the future? Because I don't think these viruses are going to go. They're probably going to change and be around.
So this is a huge one, Vinita, because I think, by God's grace, hopefully, and the resilience of science, we will have a cure. We will have a vaccine, whether it takes 12, 18, 24 months, but it will come. But I think the economic impact of what has happened is going to take a while to recover from. Some people have spoken about the V shape, the U shape, but many are unfortunately also saying there's an L-shaped curve and it's going to take a very long time. So I think one of the biggest aspects is really that people need to get into rethinking and reimagining a lot of their business. It is true that opportunities are opening out. It is true that almost 26% of companies are now saying that in certain segments of manufacturing, that they've moved up to almost 50-60% reopening. But there are also significant sectors like aviation and restaurants and hospitality where we don't know what's going to happen for a while to come. And even if they reopen, will the nature of their offering be completely different? And therefore, I think the move to digital, the ability to be resilient, the fact that we need to think about countries, borders, communities very differently, and reimagine some of our business models. I also believe that one of the strongest things in terms of assets that a company must start looking at is their brand and their plan. We cannot live based on just one single capability or one single brand. So that ability to build a brand which connects with customer, and then you can pivot that brand and that trust into whichever it is the new age economy pushes.
Dr. Banerjee, any insights from you as well? Your insight for resilience?
Yeah, so, there is this phrase that I came across. There is this phrase that I came across which says that we have traditionally designed systems for efficiency, which means that if you want to make 5,000 cars, you will find out which factory will make that car at the best price, and each factory will make one type of car. So we have to move from designing systems for efficiency to designing systems for resilience, which means that a certain amount of meaningful redundancy has to be built into the systems we design, because what is a green zone today can become a red zone tomorrow. So, and that is just an example, but this idea of design for resilience is a fundamentally different idea that one needs to look at.
Thank you.
Sangita, one last question, I'm letting you go. There's a question here which says, what are the characteristics that determine whether an organization can survive and grow in the current situation?
So that again is pretty huge, Maloo, but I think right now you have adequate cash flow.
Okay.
Can you sustain, because we don't know when demand is going to come back? Can you maintain your team? And is your business model relevant to the new age environment? If you have those two sorted, then it's only a matter of time of when you're going to come back.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you all so much for this opportunity. It really has been fun. And I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible for tomorrow's program, where FICCI and FLO are coming together to launch the Greater 50%, which is an initiative to empower women. It has multiple verticals. I look forward to all of you please joining, signing up, becoming mentors for others, because I think the biggest thing that we all need to appreciate is to have gratitude for what life has given us, and to appreciate that we're especially lucky. And so if we can reach out and help some other women by what we have learned or what we know, it would be really powerful. So this is an invitation and a request. Thank you all so much for the time. Okay, bye. Namaste.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy.
Thank you. Thanks, Ratika. Good talking to you. And Professor Banerjee, I look forward to meeting you in the future. Thank you all wonderful people who are listening. Forgive me for exiting, but you will get the privilege of some undiluted gyan from Professor, which will be inspiring. So all the best. Thank you.
Thanks, Sangita. Thank you.
Thanks, Maloo. Look forward to seeing you.
Yes, ma'am.
I hope we have Dr. Banerjee with us for some more time.
Yes. There's a question here, Dr. Banerjee. Would you envision a change in the expectation of employers from fresh graduates going forward? Or let me rephrase it. Are the fresh graduates equipped with the current way of working?
So I think this varies. When you say fresh graduates, it depends on which fresh graduates you're talking for. Okay. So I think this requires two ways, and I think there are two dimensions. So this one is we have to realize that the employee of tomorrow is very different from the employee of today. And I will give you a simple example that I was parented in an age where largely the authority of the parent was accepted. And I think I first would have significantly disagreed with a parent at maybe the age of 17 or 18. While today we have brought up our children in a very different way, in a far less hierarchical way. And when these children enter the workplace, they will expect to be led and managed much less hierarchically. So I think that is one clear thing. In terms of preparing people, I think the big difference really is that you can give people skills and knowledge, but 50% of that knowledge and skill is going to get outdated in the next 3 to 4 years, and you don't know which 50%. So learnability, the ability to reflect, the ability to stay abreast. So I think, one of the things that I am very passionate about is the way we have looked at education typically is we've looked at it as a staccato thing. You do an engineering degree or you do a graduation degree, you do an MBA, then you forget about investing in education for the next 20 years. And then maybe your company puts you for an advanced management program and you invest again. I think every year, just as you have a budget for food and a budget for clothing, you have to have a budget for personal learning. So education will be lifelong. The second is you cannot outsource your learning to a commercial organization. Individuals must take charge of their own learning and have a learning plan. How do I stay relevant 3 years from now? The fact that you're relevant today does not guarantee relevance 3 years from now. And that is actually a wonderfully empowering thing if you look at it the right way. The second thing, I think, a lot is said about millennials, but they are actually learnable, flexible, very high energy. It is true that social media and the fear of missing out creates some weaknesses which we need to maybe look at addressing. But I think there are much more positive than negative. This is also a far more socially conscious generation than any prior generation.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Ratika now. Ratika, you had a few questions to ask.
Ratika, you're muted.
Yes. So the one question came, and that's for Dr. Banerjee, is how do you plan for the new world with new possibilities when there's such limited knowledge? Any thoughts, any examples there you can bring in?
I think it's a scenario approach. I think you have to say there are many things you don't know, but there are things you know. One, for instance, you have to ask yourself, what have I learned in these 5 to 6 months that I can leverage to create new opportunities in the future, irrespective of what is uncertain that you know. Secondly, for instance, just as an example, we know work from home is going to change. We know that people's orientation towards hygiene is going to change. So I think if you look at anything that you look at as a trend and just write a simple trend and say, okay, what are the implications for my context and my business? You will find opportunities. So the idea is to keep those trends global. I mean, I'll give you a trivial example, which I normally use. It is to say that if you look at before the pandemic, if you look at tier 2 and tier 3 cities in India, the proportion of working women is going to go up. Just take that simple sentence and you can come up with 7 business opportunities which are a consequence of that. Right from packaged foods to ready to eat foods to daycare to a whole bunch of things, right? So if you identify a set of broad trends that you know will happen, don't try to make very specific predictions. But if you're looking at broad trends and their implications, then you can prepare for those broad trends and the implications. So that's the level of aggregation at which you want to think strategically.
No wonder you call the ideas man. There's some fantastic ideas for the entrepreneurs in the audience today. I know we are kind of coming near the end. So I'll just ask Dr. Banerjee, do you have any message you'd like to give to leaders here or future leaders? Anything which you'd like to say to them?
You know, I took a lot from Dr. Reddy's speech also. So since she's not here, I think inclusive is a very big word. And inclusive fundamentally means that I respect everybody's opinion, irrespective of background and position. So I think that is one message. The second is, Ratika, I like stories. So if I can end this one with a story, this is a story borrowed from Simon Sinek, where he is invited and some people at SPJIMR have heard this one before. He's invited to a speech, and the first year he's like a minister. So when he goes to speak, there's this chauffeur-driven car to pick him up. He asks for coffee. It comes in a China cup and all of that. The next year, he's no longer a minister, but he's speaking on the same topic at the same forum. He goes by Uber. He asks for coffee. They say there's the coffee machine out there. So he walks to the coffee machine, takes his coffee in a plastic cup, and then he drinks. And then he's reflecting on this, and he says, look, what I realized is at the end of the day, my true worth is that plastic coffee cup. So I think if you separate out leadership by position and leadership by earned competence and service, it is the earned competence and service which is valuable. The position is a distraction. So that would be my final thing.
No, that is fantastic. If you don't mind, can I just take one question? Miss Geet Mala has asked a question. Maybe I could ask Miss Geet to ask herself. If you could unmute and just ask the question.
Well, what I wanted to ask was, do you think that this change which is going to happen in the macro environment as a whole is the second largest change after Industrial Revolution? Should we think in that direction, so that fundamental changes can take place in every discipline?
I don't, if you're asking me, is this the second largest change, that involves forecasting, which I am reluctant to do, but I'm saying this. I think the way in which the world is moving, there are many fundamental things that are wrong. We are building the world in a way that is not sustainable. The level of inequality in this country is not sustainable. So I think this is a wake-up call for industry. It's a wake-up call for the planet. It's a wake-up call for thinkers. We need to fundamentally think about what kind of a society we want to build. In that sense, it is a huge opportunity. I think, we cannot be in a world where growth means a small segment of the population getting significantly wealthier and leave a large proportion of our population behind. I don't think it is sustainable. What we are doing to the environment is not sustainable. So I think, yes, it can be an opportunity for that kind of a change. Whether it happens or not, I don't want to be a blind optimist. I would much rather be that guarded optimist about the future of the world. But there is a lot we have to do, and all of us have a part to play.
One small question. So is SPJIMR, playing a leading role in, like a moderator in this whole game plan?
I would hope that that's a good question to end, but I think the whole idea of this partnership is we can partner with FICCI FLO to do just that. So I think, why not? We would love to. And but I think all of this happens through dialogue. The whole idea of partnership. The problem with industry academia partnership is typically we have approached each other with a menu card and biases. So if we approach these conversations with a willingness to really listen openly, then partnership can begin. So I think that's the real opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Ms. Geet, for those questions. And thank you, Dr. Banerjee. You've been a wonderful speaker, very inspiring. And there you go. You got another compliment, inspiration. So one thing I picked up, Mr. Gopal Sundaraman has said that can SPJIMR and alumni help in strengthening rural India and NGOs during this crisis? We'll not answer it here, but I can just maybe say that Dr. Nija Mattu is with us here today. She works with 100+ NGOs with SPJIMR, and there are many other faculty who work in this space. So do reach out to us. If you could maybe email to Maloo and she could email to me, we can connect up. But there is, like Dr. Banerjee said, there's dialogues and then things can happen with conversations. So I would take this opportunity to thank the lovely audience for being here. I know many of my colleagues are here, so thank you. And thank you for the FICCI FLO and FLO Mumbai chapter people here. I want to thank again Dr. Banerjee for being here and giving us your wonderful inspirational words and thoughts. There are a lot we've learned today. In fact, I was thinking, how do I close? Do I close it with the framework, which I couldn't find? So as a management professor, it pains me not to bring out something. But actually, I had to admit, in terms of framework, it was really about, as I put it, simple empathy, sense of service, and reaching out to people. That was really the secret ingredient of being a leader in times of crisis. So on that note, I want to again thank Maloo, a dear friend and a wonderful leader, for leading this this initiative. That's all from me, guys. Maloo, you want to say something? Otherwise, yeah.
Thank you very much. That was very, very insightful, with two leaders giving us a lot to think about. So we just need to go back and think, are we building a wall or a windmill, I guess. So thank you so much, Dr. Banerjee. It was wonderful and really appreciate it. Thanks all of you as well. Thanks all of you for attending. See you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Great one, Maloo. All the best. I thought it was a great session.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr.
Great session, Maloo. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Maloo, great session.